I haven't told anybody about this encounter ever, except one close friend of mine, who was surprisingly very receptive to what I had to say. This encounter happened back in 2003, right around February. This was in Tennessee, near Crab Orchard. At the time, I was doing a lot of hiking around and exploring. At the time, I was walking through a small patch of woods. Now, something people are not familiar with, or if they are not familiar with the Tennessee woods, is that we do have wild boar here, so you have to be careful. Sometimes they will charge you, and we also got bear. Not grizzlies or anything like that. Pretty much black bear, or at least that's all I've ever seen. But on this day, I saw something that I'm pretty sure wasn't natural by any means. In fact, part of me is convinced it was something evil, something out of hell. Whatever this was, walked out from the woods, started walking towards me. What freaked me out the most was obviously this thing looked like a demon, but it walked bipedal, on two legs. It didn't seem awkward or like it was having a hard time. This thing had the shape and body of a human, but it looked like a dog with large claws and the head of a wolf, covered in long, strangly gray and black hair. Whatever this thing was seemed to have its sights set right on me, and it was picking up its pace the closer it got. To give you a little bit more perspective, to my left was kind of a large hill. I'd say maybe an incline that went up about 75 feet. This thing appeared out of the woods at the top of that ridgeline, looked at me, and started coming down towards me. I panicked. I could feel this thing's energy radiating towards me, and it felt bad, very negative, like it was coming to hurt me. It never took its eyes off me the entire time it made its way down the ridgeline. Now, I know a thing with predators or two. The last thing you ever want to do is turn and run. So I kept my pace and I slowly moved backwards as far as I could to where I can get to a point so that I could finally turn and run without fear of this thing pursuing me to kill me. And then, out of nowhere, like in some sort of freak Hollywood movie, this thing dramatically picks up its pace and starts sprinting towards me, gaining speed and momentum on me like I was some injured mouse being chased by a starving cat. I was so terrified, I peed my pants right there and was able to jump and hide behind a thick tree while this, what I can only describe as a monster, came in my direction. Because of the brush, it must have not saw me as I dove behind this tree, because as it kept pursuing me, it started to go in a different direction, where it looked like I had gone. It stopped and began sniffing around, only a mere 20 or so feet away from me, and began low growling, this low guttural terrifying growl, as if it was hungry and searching for me. I don't know what this thing's intent was, but I nearly cried, and I'm a grown man. I've been through lots of sketchy situations out in the woods, even been chased by a mama bear and her cubs before, and even then, I'd never been this scared in my life. I think it was partially because this thing looked right out of a horror movie, like it was a demon, something completely unnatural, and looked like it was designed to kill, torture, and maim. After a few moments, this thing moved on, but I could still hear it rustling around in the brush very close by. I have no idea why it didn't smell me or know I was there, or maybe it did. I don't know. Had this thing caught up to me in time, and had I not jumped behind that tree, there's no telling what this thing would have done to me, especially considering if I would have fallen and injured my ankle or my knee, or worse, broke something. I would have been a goner, and probably not been able to live to tell this story. Even though this happened a long time ago, nearly 20 years ago, I still have frequent nightmares about this same creature. Although I've been out in the woods many times since, hunting, hanging out with friends, fishing, camping, sightseeing, you name it. I've never felt that same innate feeling of fear or encountered anything quite like what I did then. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, and I can't dismiss that at all. I will say the things it was not. It was definitely not a wild bear, nor was it a wild boar. None of those animals stand up on two legs, look like wolves, and tower over me. I mean, this thing looked very unique. There's no mistaking the identity of whatever monster this was. All I can say is that even now, afterwards, I'm very careful about where I go, who's around me, the weapons I carry, and my awareness. The problem, I think, is that a lot of these guys who are expert hunters or spend a lot of time in the outdoors just get overly cocky, and so their sense of awareness seems to go down, or their care or lack of. Anyway, I'm not here to spread false narratives. This is something that really happened to me, and has really left an indent on my life. Like I told you, it's affected the way I go back into the woods, the way I look behind my back when I hear a noise, the way I respond to animals around me, the people I bring with me, and the weapons that I keep on me or around me. I will never go into the woods again unarmed, or at least not prepared to encounter this thing again. Now, I haven't seen this thing again like I told you already, but there's no telling that in my future it won't come again for me. Who knows? Even though I wasn't born and raised in the Great Lakes area, although having lived in Indiana for a while, I've kind of caught on to some things around the area. The Ohio grassman, which is very commonly talked about. Well, what I heard this day, or what I should say experienced, was something other than the grassman. I don't exactly know what this could have been. It was very canine-like from what I experienced. Let me go ahead and get into this so you can understand. This happened a few years ago, but I will never forget it. The Spurgeon Hollow Trail is located directly in the middle of the Washington-Jackson State Forest. It is reached from a county road just a few miles off of State Highway 135. The trail itself is beautiful and thick with lush, gorgeous forest. At some point in the trail, it forks off, where if you take the left, it goes up a very steep incline, full of thick woods. If you take the right, it parallels the lake to your right side. Because I'm sadistic, in a way, and like to really burn my thighs, I went to the left, going up a very steep and thickly wooded hill area. Now, I want to point out that this is when the weird feelings began. Not even that far up the trail, I began to feel like I was being closely watched, and then, not too long after, started hearing some low growls. That's when I got another strange sensation that something was closing in on me. It was like being surrounded by a pack of wolves, I guess, and they were all coming for me. But I kept looking around, over my shoulder, in front of me, behind me, and to the sides of me. Nothing. One thing I recognized, though, was that the woods were very quiet. Very unusually quiet, that is. And there were no other hikers on the trail with me at the time. I don't know enough about this specific trailhead to tell you just how popular or how not popular this trail is. But I find it weird that at the time, I was the only one here. Anyway, I continued to push on, despite the ever-growing feelings of paranoia and that something was closing in on me. That's when I began hearing noises directly behind me, like something following me. I even thought I was being pranked, because every time I turned around, there would be nothing there. At one point, I considered that I was having hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, but I couldn't really pinpoint it on anything specific. Even though I had heard the low growls, the vegetation moving around me, and the snapping of twigs and trees, it was really hard for me to tell exactly what it was, but the feeling wouldn't shake. That is, until I got to one segment in the trail, where up ahead, I distinctly saw this, and there's no mistaking it. I will never forget it. About 6, maybe 7 feet up from the ground, I saw 3 heads pop out from behind different trees. They resembled wolf heads, or at least very similar to a canid type of animal, and they had these slow, glowing amber eyes. And when I say slow glowing, they almost kind of had this very low, slow pulsation going on. Like they would get brighter, and then they would dull, and then they would get brighter again, and dull. There was most definitely a pulsation going on, and it was almost sickly alluring, like some kind of alien light. It was terrifying, but again, alluring at the same time. It almost put you in a hypnotic trance, as if to lure yourself towards these creatures, whatever they were. I didn't see any pupils, but these eyes were very distinctive. And because I was there in the afternoon, there was plenty of daylight, so there was no mistaking that I was seeing this creature. And there wasn't just one. There was 3 of them, all standing behind a different tree that were all close to each other, watching me, watching my every step. I don't know if they purposely made themselves visible, or at least their heads, or what, but I strongly believe at the time that they decided to make themselves somewhat known, because these were the things that had been following me since the fork in the trail. I want you to know that at that moment, I felt 2 very distinct feelings. The first was this hypnotic trance, as if I was being lured towards them. It's a feeling I don't quite understand, nor can I accurately describe. It was a feeling out of my control, like my body was just responding, and I was being pulled effortlessly towards them, without any of my control. The second feeling was the worst feeling in the pit of my stomach. My entire being screaming that I needed to leave there now, that I needed to get out of there. Danger, danger. Somehow, I just managed to collect myself enough to escape and run as fast as I could, not caring if whatever these things were chased after me. Again, they were so high up in the trees that they were looking down from me, and they were behind the trees, so I couldn't see exactly what their bodies looked like. But I knew they were some sort of creatures, some sort of beings with wolf heads, and the heads were massive. It's hard for me to accurately describe to you, but that's what I experienced. It was horrifying, and it makes me not want to go back to certain trailheads because of it. That's my experience. Take it what you will, but that is what happened to me, and I have to be careful to this day where exactly I go, just to be sure that I don't run into those again.